So this is where we stopped last time. So we had this class declared, and as you can see, this is the class student that is used in another class. So if you remember what I did, I gave you as a general advice, every time you have the type of classes to build, you have a class that you're going to use to test your class student. For example, I'm going to name it like test student. This is where I'm going to have just the main, where I'm going to test my other classes. And usually it's better to separate the class that was going to hold the main method, and then the other from the other classes, just to have them separated, just for organization purposes. So I'm going to create that test student, and that test student, let me just, for those who are using JCreator, I'm just going to put all the packages out. I'm going to delete that test student package, and now I'm having like this test student, and I'm going to create a new class. Notice where from where I right click on that package, which says like default package, right click and then new Java class student, and in the class student we used let me probably try just to copy and paste this. I'm going to fix some others, so we're not going to lose some time. Notice that the copy and pasting had to be checked carefully, because these double quotes are not really well prepared. Okay, format, and then we have something interesting. Okay, let's go back and then copy the rest. This is the main. I'm going just to copy this right as it is, and then in the main paste it. Of course, same problem with the double quotes. And over here, always use this source format. I'm using sometimes the shortcut of having this Alt-Shift-F. This is the default shortcut of that, so that's why sometimes you see it working. I'm not going to source format every time. I'm just going to press that shortcut, and it's arranged that for me. So now this is my class, and this is my class student, and this is where I'm using that class student. So this is something that you should distinguish between the class definition, where I define the class, what are the instance variables, what are the methods, and then where I'm using that class. So I'm using the class student in this class test student, because this is where I have the main method that is calling that class. I might be using a class that is calling another class. For example, if I'd like to use another class, I can create, let's say, I don't know, just for testing purpose, a new class that I'm going to call, I don't know, course, because I also have test. I already have one that is called test student. So let's go to course, for example, and in this course I'm going to have like int, or maybe string, like a course code, the code for the course, and let's say, why not, an array of students that are part of that course. So as you can see here, I have this class course is using another class which is student, and in that class new student I can do, for example, I don't know, in this class course, let's create like a public method, public void display, whatever, display list of students, for example. And in this I can put the code to display the content of the students. I can do, for example, something like for I don't know what's the size. Let's say I'm fixing the size just to make it easy to understand. Student, and then I fix it like I have 5 students, let's say, or maybe like 13. So now it might be easier for you to understand when I do this students dot length, which is going to give me the amount of the number of students, and then I can do something like this. For every time I'm going to do this. Output details. I'm going to output the details of every student in that class. So which is I'm just calling this method display list of students, which is every time is going to display for every student in that array its information. So anyway, the purpose of this class that I just added, I'm just going to delete it because I don't want you to get lost using that. But just I want you to realize that I can use a class that is using another class that can be used in another class, and we can use many classes. I can have, for example, in class student, a lot of different classes that I might be using, and this is not a problem. So this is where it is really important to organize your code carefully and not get lost with your classes. This is why it's better to always have each class separated in a separate file, so it can be clearly separated from, distinguished also from the rest. Yes?
What is the benefit of doing this? You said that
The benefit of?
the benefit of using two classes. So it's like involving your program.
You separate. Imagine now we are doing just very simple classes. We're programming something really simple. But when you are going to program some classes that have a lot of actions, then your classes are going to be quite so long. So if you put a lot of different classes in one file, then it is going to be very hard to follow. Okay, what is this? What is that? So this is one way. Always for every class you create your own every class you put it in a separate file, and the main method in another class, which is like the one that is clearly so you can clearly know which one is going to start the whole thing, from where we're going to start, because we have this class defined here, but we're not going to be using this class unless we are declaring an object from that class, a variable from that class. So then now we are going to be using that class. Fine, let's go back here. And here, that's better. Now what we're going to be doing, a question? Sorry? Yeah, we're going to start talking about the return. Now there's something which is also improving how to work with classes, is to do the information hiding and encapsulation. So this information hiding and encapsulation allow you to hide some things for the people, the developers, the programmers who are going to be using your class. Because now, don't think about only programming for yourself. You're programming for maybe only for yourself, but maybe your code, your class can be made useful, and then you can give it to put it online. So when you put it online, someone can use that class and then work with it because he finds it useful. But there's some ways where you don't want your users, in terms of your programmers that are going to be using your class, to be confused or maybe to do some mistakes, because what you would like to do is to restrict the use of the variables, the access to your variables. For example, you don't want, if you're writing a class, if you're defining a class of an employee, and among its variables you have, let's say, the salary. If you put it like this way, or maybe like like this, as we did it this way right now, I can put a negative value for the GPA. So imagine if I can put a negative value for the salary. Well, it doesn't make sense. This is not something that is acceptable. While actually in my coding, this is permissible, because I give access to the variable, and I can put any value as long as that value respects the data type of that variable. So this is a double. Minus 2.5 is a valid double, and I can put it in a GPA. But in our case, we don't want this to happen. We don't want a GPA which is negative. Okay, because this is not the reality of how GPAs are calculated. So we need to do some things to prevent that from happening. So we need to hide some information and put some mechanisms that will allow us to control what are the type of values that are entered into our variables, and also we can also control the access to those variables. For example, I can make a variable that is read only. I can only get some information from it, but I cannot change it. In this way that we did right now, we can't, because if I have access to a variable, I can read from it and I can write to it. So how can I control this? Then this is what we are going to be talking about in this part, inshallah, today. Information hiding and encapsulation. So information hiding, I'm going to hide something. What am I going to hide? I'm going to hide the variables, these instance variables. And then encapsulation, this is where I'm going to make my code being used in the safest way. I'm trying just to simplify its meaning. So I'm going to make it safe to use in terms of avoiding having some wrong data into the variables. Let me show you actually what I mean about that. Besides the fact I'm just going to this is just an example for how this method is hidden, which means we don't know what goes inside this substring, but we know what is the output of that substring. It just gives us a part of that text. But this is what we mean by this information hiding. And the encapsulation, this is the fact that when you do, for example, this S1 dot, they have all these that come together. There are all these methods and these instance variables that are going together with that object. This is the encapsulation. They are all put together, and this is part of this object-oriented programming. So let me introduce you to something that is new to you for today. These are called these access modifiers. We've been using mainly public. So when we're going to hide something, we're going to make it private. So what I mean with this is that this is my code, right? It is working. Notice what would happen if I put the name, for example, to be private. As soon as I save, if I go back here, it tells me, excuse me, you cannot put a value into this name because it is private. It exists, but you're not allowed to put a value inside of it from outside of that class. Of course, I can put any value from here. Let's say inside of the class, I can put anything. For example, this is permissible inside of the class, even if it's private. But outside of that class, if I'm trying to use that instance variable that is private, I can't. So now what we did, we have the ability to decide, is this variable going to be accessible from outside directly or not? If I put it as, well, now there's no output because your program has have a problem right now because it doesn't allow you to put something, so you're forced to delete this, or maybe just put it in comment. So now if you would like to keep working on the same program, you have to remove this one over here. So what's the output? Well, basically, because I put test into name, all you're going to see is test with all those values. So let's run that. Name, test, blah, 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 and so on. But this is not the point. The point is, when I put something as private, I cannot access it directly. So this is the first mechanism of protecting my variables. So I cannot just put something inside of them. But well, if I do this private, how can I put a value inside of that? Well, I'm going to do a different way. I'm going to use a method to allow me to get the information if I wanted to get it, or to set the information to put it inside of it. So now I just would like you to realize that I cannot put a value inside of it. I cannot even read it. Can I do something like s1.name? Notice that if I put the dot now, if I press the dot, the IntelliSense does not help me. It doesn't show the name because the name is not public and I cannot see it. Even if I type it myself, because I know that there's a variable called name inside that class, even though I type it, I cannot access it. So I just would like you to remember there are two types of access to the variable. The first type is that I'm accessing the variable to put a value inside of it, like this one over here. So I'm trying to put a value inside that variable. And here I'm trying to read from that variable what is inside of it to display it somewhere, for example. So two actions here. And I'm going to be able to decide, I will decide, if people that are using my class from here, for example, are they allowed to put a value? And then I'm going to write a method that will allow them to do that. Or I can also allow them only to get the value, so they are allowed to see what's inside of name without the ability to change its content or to store something inside of it. Or I can allow both of them. I can allow my users, my programmers that are going to be using my class, to change and to see the content of that variable. So this is what we're going to be talking about, how to manage that. So first things first, we need to know that there are two access modifiers. I mean, there are more than two, but for us, for this scope of this course, we're going to focus on only those two, public and private. Inshallah, later on, we're going to see more, you're going to see more about that, inshallah. So public, that means everybody can access it. Private, I can't. So now, if in this example, if they made like public string name and private in private double GPA, this means what? I cannot change which? Okay, let's wait a minute. ID and GPA cannot be changed, but can I read their content? No, I cannot, because they are private as well. Everything that is private, I cannot read their content. When I'm saying I cannot read their content, I mean from outside of the class. Okay, this is what I mean. Outside of the class, not from inside of the class. Of course, I can do that. Okay, maybe I should put it somewhere else, maybe here, so it will not disturb that much. Okay, so inside of the class I can do whatever I want because this is part of the class. Your question was?
Why do I have to write public when I didn't write it as well?
Okay, that's a good question. I didn't use public before, but now I use public. And why is it important for me to use public? And what is the difference, for example, between that public and not use that public? For example, what we mean is this thing. Even if I didn't use this as public, they were still accessible here, right? But I just would like you to notice something. Let's do something. Let's write one of them. Let's make it public. And let's go back here and try to see what are the different options. I just would like you to realize that they are not exactly the same. They are accessible, but not for the same reason. When I don't put something like that, when I don't put either public or private, this means that you have this symbol over here. And if you realize, if you have noticed, this is the same symbol that you have there, right? So it's the same symbol for package. So this means that this is available in the package. So just to answer your question, but this is not part of whatever. Just take it as a new habit. Now every time you don't write it just like that. You have to specify either public or private, just for the sake of this exercise. So we're not going to be just writing the data type and then the name of the variable and that's it. We're going to decide, first of all, is it private or public? And then later on we're going to learn more about the difference between not putting it putting it public, and there's some other things. There's something called protected, which has another meaning, and so on. So from now on, we're going to use public if we want it to be accessed from outside of the class, private if we don't. And actually, what is the best? The best thing is always to put it as private. Like the best practice is to put them as private, and then you can always decide which ones am I allowing to be accessed and how I can specify that. So public, no restrictions. Private means they cannot be accessed from outside of the class. Very important to remember for outside of the class, because inside of the class I can always access all the variables, even if they are private. Okay, so yeah. So now this is going to be giving us a problem, is it? Because in this example, what we did, we put those two as private. So if we change that to private, then these are going to give us some errors because we changed them to private. And this is a good practice to always make all instance variables private. Even if I'm going to use them, but it is a good practice to get to use that. That's why we are going to, from now on, every time we're going to be declaring something, we're going to make it like private. But then if I make them as private, how can I put some values inside of them? They're private. That means I only have to put values from inside of the class? No, there's a way. And this is what we're going to be talking about. How can I put some values into those? This is disturbing me. I don't know where to put it. Okay, maybe leave it here. Let's see. Let's try it here. So there's something that we call accessors and mutators methods. Some very special methods that we're going to be using to access our variables. And how they work, accessors, I just would like to access, means get the information from that variable. Mutators, I'm going to make it change. I'm going to change that method. I'm going to set a new value for that method, for that variable. And this is an example of accessor. And the return is coming. And this is when we talk about this return. So what these two methods are going to be doing? These two methods are returning one value. What is that value? The content of ID. Whatever is in ID, you're going to return it. So when I return that, then I'm going to, it's like a value. I can just put it whatever I want it to be. Either I store it in a variable, or it is part of some sort of a calculation if I want it to be part of that, or maybe just display it on the screen. But I can have access to that information. I can get the value, even if it was private, because I cannot directly get the value. I can only get the value through this public int get ID. Okay. And notice that this is some patterns that we're using. Like we have this get, and then this is the name of the variable. So we always going to use get, even if this is not a requirement. Java can allow you to name it whatever you want. This is just a name as long as it respects the identifier restrictions, which are not starting with the number, only have numbers, letters, and underscore, and not be a Java keyword. These are the only restrictions that you can have on naming your methods or your variables. So as long as your method respect that, you can name it whatever you want. You can name it public int Muhammad, and in your mind Muhammad is going to return the ID. That's fine. But this is not the best practice. Again, remember, we're just now optimizing our programming. We're not just only programming. So this is some sort of a standardization of naming of those accessors. Every time I have a variable that is private, and I would like to have a method that is allowing me to get the value from that method, from that variable, I'm going to name my method get and then the name of the variable. And then I'm going to return that value inside of it. Like here, I'm returning the ID. Whatever is inside the ID, I'm going to return it. Whatever it's inside the GPA, I'm going to return it. Of course, this is the same data type. Usually, this is the same data type of your variable, instance variable. So in our case over here, are we reading from the? Are we getting something from the ID or from the GPA? No, we're just putting. So in this specific example, we did not use those accessors. So we might not need them, for example. So I don't need to return to get the value from these IDs, from this ID, GPA, and name. I just need to put some values. And when I'd like to put some value inside of a variable that is private, I'm going to now use those mutator methods. And these are the mutator methods. Very simple. What happened? And this is an example. So mutators are really interesting, and that's why actually this is one of the benefits of putting the instance variables as private, is that you can control what you put inside of your variables, which you don't have that control if you allow them to be public, and then the user can put anything like a negative GPA if you want, no problems. Or in this case, for example, you can put a name which is empty, an empty name. So now what we can do some things. For example, we can use this set name. That means if you'd like to change the name, you're going to give me the name. And notice that this is the first time where we are using these parameters. So now if I'm using this means that I am going to use this method requires a text that I'm going to put in n. And that text, I'm going to check it. If the length, remember the length, what does the length do for the string? Get the full name? No, it counts something. How many numbers? How many letters? How many characters, just to be more precise. It counts how many characters because it can be a comma, space. It will count that as well. It counts how many characters you have in your text, in your string. And then it will give you that value as here. So this is returning, this is some sort of a method that returns a value, which is, I think, an int. And that int, I'm going to see if it's different from 0. If it's different from 0, that means something was answered in the text. If it is not different than 0, that means it is equal to 0. That means I did not put anything, so I don't have to change anything. So I'm changing the name here only if the text that you give me to put inside of the name is greater, has at least one character. I can put some restrictions. For example, I need at least to have like 2 or 3 characters, whatever. This is just an example to show you how I can allow access to my variables, even if they are private, but this time through a method which is called the mutator. So how in the practice, how are we going to be doing that? I'm going to add a new method, public, because I want it to be accessible from outside of the class, and it's going to be void because it is not going to return anything to me. I'm just going to set something inside of it. And as I said, the same thing that I said for the get, be able to, as a standard name for any accessors, like the standard for naming your mutators is to put set and then the name of the variable. So set name means I'm going to change the content of the name. What is the data type of name? That's string, so I'm going to use this as a string, and then let me just put as n now. I don't want to confuse. So this n, I'm going to test it. If n dot length, and you see this length, this is public int length, that it returns an int, and if it is different than 0, I'm going to be doing something, which is whatever it's inside of n, you put it in name. I just would like you to know something. In NetBeans, actually, if you press the control key, so I'm still holding the control key pressed, and then I click, I can see that I can click on those methods. So if I'd like to see actually this method, how it is, I can just click on it, and you see it takes me now to a class which comes with, this is not my class, this is the Java, the string class that comes with Java, with the JDK. And then you can see that it returns something which is, well, for now, value.length and so on. So you can just give you that information. You can always navigate through, even from here, for example, I can go to click on this output details. It is going to take me to where the output details is defined, where I can just follow and see the code of that. So now I have this new mutator that allows me to change the content of the name, and I'm going to be able to do whatever I was not able to do now, because I cannot access the name and put something inside of it through this. But now I can do set name. You can see now I have also now this set name. And let me show you something. When I do set name and give as a text Ali inside of it, so what is going to happen? I'm going to get inside here, and this n, what is inside of n now? Ali, according to that example. So now it is going to count how many letters are, how many characters are in this text. This is going to be equal to what? 3. Is 3 different than 0? Not equal, actually. It is the best way to read it. Not equal to 0. Yes, I get inside, and this text of Ali is going to be stored in a variable name. Yeah, name. And I can do now the same. If I'd like to have the ID, what should I do? Okay, help me here. Public. Yeah, for all those that are private, if I want to allow their values to come from outside of the class, well, I have to make a mutator that will allow them to put the value inside those variables. So I have like public void get. No, I'm setting. I would like to change. So set get to get the value. Set to change the value. Set ID. No. So this is an int. So I need to use int. Let's say int I. If is it always? Should I always check? No, it's not mandatory upon me to always check. I can just use this ID equal I, and that's it. I meant equal. I don't always have to put an if, so I don't want you to always in your mind there's always an if in a setter. No. If I need it, I'm going to put it. If I don't, so I'm just going to leave it like that, just so you can remember that it is not mandatory to have an if or anything inside of it. The only thing that is mandatory to have is to put a value if you want it to be. So you have to put something inside your ID if you want, because this is why this accessor, this mutator is defined now. What about the GPA? Public void set GPA. Well, what is the data type of the GPA? Is a double, so I better keep it as a double. Double, say G, and then I can test, for example, just to test if the G is greater or equal to 0, then I'm going to put the value. If not, I'm not going to put anything. Or maybe if it is not, I can do something. Just it's not only the if. I can put an else, I can have a for, I can do whatever I would like to do. This is just, I'm just telling you what is permissible, and sky's the limit. Whatever it actually is your need, your need is going to dictate what you're going to be putting inside of there. For example, if someone gives me a negative GPA, I'm going to put the GPA, put it back at 0, for example. If someone gives me a GPA which is positive, I'm going to save that and put it here. If someone gives me a GPA which is negative, I'm going to put 0 in the GPA. I'm not going to accept that value, but I'm going to put 0. So now that I have that, I can just, instead of using this ID, I can use set ID, and then between parentheses, I will put this value over here. Of course, the dot is required. Same thing, set GPA, and this is minus 2.5. I'm going to keep this minus 2.5 so I can see it working. And then let's copy the same thing and paste it and change the names and the ID just to keep the same value. So I just would like to see it working again as it was. And of course, this should be S2, 2, and 2. So I'm declaring, I'm setting the values for both of my two objects, and then I'm displaying the content. If I run now, it is the same output, except that you realize that I did not accept the negative value. So this is about it. If I'd like now, for example, to get the information, for example, if I'd like to display the name of the first student is, and then I have S1 dot, what can I use? I don't have the get name. So now I just would like you to realize that my class students allow people to, developers, to put values, but they're not allowing them to get values from them. So if I'd like to allow both of them get the values and set the values, then I need to manually prepare that. So I can just put this public. Now it should not be void because I need to return. Well, I need to return because this value, what is the data type of the name? String. So I'm going to return that string, and then I'm going to name it get name, and I don't need any parameter. Generally with the accessors, you don't need to put any parameter. This is the general case. You might need to do something, but it's in most cases you don't have to put any parameter. So now it is telling me that there's a problem. Why is it telling me that there's a problem? Because I said that this method should return something which is a string, and it doesn't see any return statement in there. So if you don't put a return statement, it's going to complain. It tells you, no, you have to return something. This method has a problem. So let's return something. And what am I going to return? The name. So now, if I go here, I have this get name that is going to allow me to get the name. And if I run, now the name of the first student is, and I was able to get that. Can I get the ID as well? Well, for now, I don't, because I only have the get name and set name. The get ID, I don't have it. So in this class, I'm allowing people to see the name and to change the name, but I'm not allowing them to see the ID, but allowing them to change it. So this is the possibility that you have. You can always have get and set for all your variables, or maybe just get for some and set for some others and get set for some others. It's up to you now to decide, based on the class that you are defining, what do you need? What do you want? Do you want those variables to be accessible all the time? So you put a getter and setter. To be accessible, so you put a setter. A getter to be able to access them, to get the value. If you want to also allow your developers to put some values from outside of the class, then you have to create some setters. And if you want them both, but you have to write them both. Luckily, there's something in most IDEs that will allow you to generate those setters and getters for you, even if you don't have them. Let me show you something. I'm going to delete those. So I have just made them private, right? And then I don't have the getters and the setters. And of course, if I save, as soon as I save, these are going to be problems because I don't have them anymore. But look, there's something. I think if it is in refactor, encapsulate fields. So what this means now, those fields are going to be private. Those private fields are going to be, and I'm encapsulated, and then I'm going to allow accesses. What do I want to do? Do I want, for example, the name to be accessed and modified at the same time, or maybe just accessed, or maybe just modified? It's just as if it's up to me to decide. If I want them all, that's fine. Let's put them all. You can select all, or we select only the getters. Let's select none first. Select only the getters, or select only the setters. Setters are mutators, and then getters are accessors. So if I want them all, well, I'm going to select them all. And if I click on refactor, look what would happen. I have the public string get name, public void set name, get ID, set ID, get GPA, set GPA. So it's already there for me. I can really undo yes. Yes.
What is the difference between get and set?
Set allow you to, the difference between get and set is that in setting, you change the value because I'm putting something inside of name. I'm changing the value of name. In getting, I'm not changing the value of name, but I'm returning it. When I'm returning that value, I can use it like here.
Why have to be set name and what difference is that?
Because set name, you're going to change. If you put set name, and then you put any name, now what you say, you'd like to change the name and put Muhammad inside of it. This is what set name is doing. But I don't want to have set name here. I want to get the name, whatever is inside of the name. I just would like here to get it returned so I can display it. So that's why this is going to be a string that I'm adding to another string to display it on the screen. Because this get name is going to return a string. So this is what the return is for. The return is going to make this get name becomes a value. So this get name here, it's a value. What is the content? What is that value? What is inside of that value? What is that value? I mean that value is whatever is inside of name. Whatever is inside of name is a value. So that value, I'm having it here. So this is the value of the name that I can do whatever I want to do with it. I can display it on the screen. I can declare it and put it in a variable. I can do whatever I want with it. I just would like you to realize something really important. That is, when a method is void, you cannot do something like this. Even if, for example, this is a valid statement, right? Set name, this is fine. But if I'm trying to set name and put it inside of a variable, excuse me, you can't. So, why you can't? Why can't you do that? It's a private? No, it is not private because it is public. I can access it from here, and it is public. You can see this set name is public. It is void, which means this does not return any value, which means that this is not a value. This is nothing. Void means empty, means nothing. Can I put nothing in S? No. I have to put a value in S. I cannot put nothing. So if I want to have something like this that becomes a value, so I can put it somewhere as a variable in a variable, or maybe just display it on the screen, I need it to be something else than void. So in this case, a string, or I can have some others if I have them, but I don't have them. So let's say, for example, I just would like to have a getter for ID. What should I do? Public void? No. Getters are never void. Int is not double. Sorry, I meant ID is not double. So it's int. And then get ID. Do I need anything between parentheses? No, because I'm getting some information. I'm not putting anything. And then return the ID. So now I have this get ID that I can use here. Either, for example, I can have an int that I'm going to put the value from it, so get ID, for example. And I can put this S1 get ID if I want. And that's fine. This is going to be acceptable. So when I'm putting a method as non-void, it is becoming a value. One last thing, and then we're getting into some exercises. When you generate, notice, for example, I'm going to delete those, and I'm going to generate again. Remember, I need to go to refactor and then encapsulate fields, and I select whatever I need to be selecting. I just would like you to realize something, and you click on refactor. Of course, there are no question. The if that was before is deleted. You have now you have to customize your getters and setters as you wish. But at least it gives you all the main getters and setters, so you can have the minimum code for the getters and setters. But did you realize something new? This. What is it?
S1 or S2.
Sorry?
S1 and S2.
But we're in the student. There's no S1 and S2 here.
But outside in the menu.
No. It is has something to do with the class itself, but not with S1 and S2, because the S1 and S2 in this class doesn't exist. This is something really important. Let's understand that by removing it. If I remove this, what is going to happen? Whatever I set in, let's say, for example, this set name, okay, Ali. If I set name in Ali, so this becomes Ali, right? So now the name is Ali. I'm going to put name inside of name. Which name? Is it the name from here or the name from there? And I'm going to put it in which one? In the name from here, and this is the parameter name or the class instance name. So to distinguish between the two, notice if I just click here, actually it is only the name, the parameter. As you see, it is only selecting the ones that are selected. If I want them now to, this one to be from the class, this is how I distinguish. Now I say this means this class. In this class, if you say this and you realize if I put the dot, it is going to show me all what is available in this class. So this dot name now is completely different. What I'm saying, check now this name, which is normally I'm just waiting for the highlighting. Let me save. Notice now if I click on this, the name, now the highlighting is not working. I don't know for what reason. Let's just get back and hopefully it is going to be working again. Yes. Notice now this name is the same as this one, which is what I want. I want whatever you give me to put it inside of that name, which is that one over there. So this is just allowing to remove the ambiguity of which name is which, because I have two variables with the same name, and the one is an instance variable and the other one is just like a parameter which is known only inside of that one. So that's the only thing I would like you to realize when you use this NetBeans to generate your getters and setters. Then you have to be careful to understand what this means. But this is not mandatory. I strongly advise you for now. Control Z doesn't work. Okay, because I deleted everything. So I just would like you to realize that we don't need to always put some conditions. If we would like to put some conditions, we're going to put it. Now I lost all my changes because I closed the file and opened it again. So I'm just going to add those conditions again. If let's say I deleted from the. Oh, maybe yes. Yeah, there's another way. Maybe from history. Yes. And can I see something? So today it. Maybe this one. So current file, and then today at that time. So this is where this is the same thing. It seems like this is the same thing. What about this one? Yeah, probably this is no. Probably here. Yes, this is where I have. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, and this is what is interesting. I'm going to click on this one. Replace all, and now if I save back, if I go back to the source, I just replaced all the code that was generated with the previous version of it at that time, which contains whatever I had before. Okay? Any questions? Yes?
We would like to use a scanner. Do you put it inside the getter?
Okay, if you'd like to use the scanner, well, it depends. It's all about what you would like to do. So how do you want the scanner, how do you want to ask the user to give you the information? Is it when you call something like in here? But here, as you see, for example, the set name, I already have the value. So if I'd like to call the scanner, for example, in this case, I would just put it here outside of the class. And then have this scanner. So key b equal new scanner system.in, and then I can put, for example, please enter the name of the first student, and then put that name there. Next line, if I want it to be like the first full line, for example. Now, please enter. Well, this should be in a. Please enter the name of the first student. So what I did now, instead of having the value fixed inside of this test, I'm asking the user to give me the value of that name, and then I'm going to put it there. If I'd like also to have like the ID and so on, please enter the information of the first student, and I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to, for example, let's use kb.nextInt. And then kb next double, for example. So now in this case, the first student is going to be, the information of that first student is coming from the user. Let's run this. I have please enter the information of the first student. I'm going to put like, so for example, Muhammad Al-Amrani, let's say. And all this, because I said read line, is going to be in the name. I press enter, it is going to wait for me for the ID, so this is the ID, and the GPA, like -5, let's say, and then you can see that I displayed, this is the name, this is the ID that I just entered, and it displays 0, because you remember, we asked that if the GPA was negative, just display 0. So this is how I can put the values from the keyboard, anyways. So the most important thing, and then I get your question, is that I prepare the getters and setters, and then I can use them the way I want. Is it coming from me or coming from the user? It's up to then the programmer to decide. I just programmed that class to be flexible enough to put some values, to get some values, and maybe I'm restricting, I'm not allowing to get the GPA. I'm just setting the GPA, for example. So this is up to me. As I said, I'm just giving you the tools to work and design your classes in a way that is optimized, and then you are just going to specify what is inside of your classes. Generally, if you work in a team, I mean, the team leader or the analyst programmer is going to assign some tasks to you. He's going to design the class, tell you, okay, I need a class that have these methods and these names and these instance variables. I would like to have this as a getter and setter. This one I just would like to have like the setter, this one only the getter, and so on. So he's going to specify that in some sort of a graph. I mean, a design of the class, something like this. Remember when we showed you something like this? And actually, I'm going to show you more. We're going to talk about this more, inshallah, later on. So if you work in a team, they're going to assign a bunch of classes to you to develop, and so you need to understand what these are, what are the getters and setters, what are their objectives, what are their finality, and why do we use them, when to use them, and so on. Your question was? Why we didn't display the get ID? Which one? It did. I think it did. It should have. The name of the first student is. It is there. These two lines are displaying these two lines, and the last one is coming from this value from get ID. Okay.